closer, breathe in the light. Morning hum in the garden high. Every wing has a story to tell. Every root knows how to heal. We listen, we learn, we gather and grow. We're the bees and the wild things know.
Hello, bee enthusiasts. Welcome back to the Attic Bee Podcast. I'm your host, Jody Schramm. There's something about standing next to a beehive that makes you feel like you're witnessing something sacred and not dramatic. There's nothing flashy about it. It's just deeply ordered and deeply purposeful. Thousands of bees, each with their own role, moving in what looks like chaos at first. But when you take the time to really watch, you realize it's anything but chaotic. It's a system, it's a community, it's belonging. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, that's something a lot of us are searching for these days. As a beekeeper, I've spent a lot of time observing hives. And as someone who guides people through nature therapy experiences, I've also spent a lot of time observing people. And what strikes me is this: we are incredibly connected, and yet many of us feel profoundly disconnected. Disconnected from each other, disconnected from purpose, disconnected from the natural world that once grounded us. So today I'm exploring this question: what can bees teach us about belonging? Not in an abstract way, but in a way that's rooted in biology, behavior, and lived experience. A honeybee colony isn't just a group of individual insects. It's a living system. Scientists often describe it as a superorganism, which I just love. That means that the colony functions almost like a single living being, with each bee acting like a cell in a larger body. No one bee survives long on its own, and no one bee is more important than the system itself. There's a division of labor, where nurse bees care for the young, foragers gather nectar and pollen, guard bees protect the entrance, and the queen lays eggs to grow and sustain the colony. And here's something really cool. Bees don't cling to one role forever. As they age, they transition. They respond to what the colony needs, and they adapt accordingly. And this is where I'd like to kind of pause for a moment and dig a little deeper. Because in human life, we're often asked, what do you do? And it's a question I absolutely abhor. It's like, I do a lot of things. What are you asking? What do I do for work? What do I do for fun? What do I do to be creative? It's, like thinking about who we are. What is our identity? We're expected to answer that question in this very fixed way. It usually has to do with what do we do to earn money. But bees don't operate like that. They are constantly in relationship with their environment and with each other. Their sense of belonging isn't tied to a static identity. It's tied to contribution. And there's a difference between belonging and fitting in. Fitting in often requires us to shape ourselves to match expectations. On the other hand, belonging is more about being part of something because of who you are and how you contribute. In a hive, there's no pressure to perform individuality just for its own sake. But there's also no erasure of purpose. Every bee matters because of how it participates in the whole. And if we look at human research on this, we see something strikingly similar. There's a 2010 study by Julianne Holt-Lundstad and her colleagues that found that strong social relationships increase the likelihood of survival by 50%. Not happiness, not productivity, survival. Belonging, it turns out, isn't just emotional, it's biological. According to these findings, the influence of social relationships on the risk of death are comparable with widely documented risk factors for mortality like smoking and heavy drinking. And they exceed the influence of other risk factors like physical inactivity and obesity. That's something to pay attention to. One of the most well-known behaviors in honeybees, which we've talked about on several episodes, is something called the waggle dance. When a forager bee finds a good food source, she returns to the hive and performs a movement pattern that communicates distance, direction, and quality. It's precise and efficient, and it's relational. Bees don't just communicate information. They communicate constantly through touch, vibration, and chemical signals. They're in contact with one another. Now, think about how we communicate. We have language, yes, but we also have tone, body language, presence. And yet, in so many modern environments, our communication just becomes transactional and digital. It's quick, it's efficient, it's very surface level. We lose the depth of connection that tells someone else, I see you. I'm with you. You matter to me. There's research that supports this too. Studies in neuroscience suggest that social connection regulates the nervous system, helping to reduce stress and promote emotional stability. In other words, connection isn't just nice to have. It's regulating, it's grounding, and it's absolutely necessary. We don't need to look far to see what happens when systems lose connection. In ecosystems, when pollinators decline, entire food webs are affected. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, about 75% of the world's food crops depend, at least in part, on pollination. So when bees struggle, it's not just about bees, it's about everything connected to them. And the same is true for us. When we lose connection to people, to purpose, to place, we feel more than just a little off. We feel untethered. And this is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about nature therapy. Because when we step into the natural environments, whether it's a forest, a field, or even our backyards, we begin to experience ourselves differently, not as separate, but as part of something, and often something much larger than just ourselves. There was research published in something called Frontiers of Psychology in 2019 that found that nature-based experiences can significantly increase feelings of connectedness, both to the environment and to others. And I see this all the time in the walks I guide. People carrying stress, distraction, and disconnection. And then slowly, as we engage our senses, we start noticing things. They soften. Something shifts. They begin to feel included and connected. So what can we actually do with all of this? Because I never want these conversations to simply be theoretical. Well, here are a few gentle invitations for you to contemplate and maybe journal on. Notice where you already belong. Not where you're trying to prove yourself, but where you're already part of something meaningful. Shift from identity to contribution. So you might ask yourself, how am I participating? How am I showing up? How am I supporting the whole in terms of community, family, ecosystems? Deepen your communication. Slow down, listen more fully, be present, and reconnect with the natural world. Even a few minutes outside can begin to restore that sense of connection. Because belonging isn't something we earn, it's something we experience when we recognize that we are already part of a larger system. The hive doesn't question whether it belongs. It simply functions as a part of a whole. And maybe there's something freeing in that, not losing ourselves, but remembering that we were never separate to begin with. Thank you for being here with me today. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone else who might need it. And if you're feeling called to reconnect with nature, with yourself, with a deeper sense of belonging, reach out and connect with me. That's exactly the kind of work I do through Attic Bee. Until next time, take a moment to step outside, slow down, and notice where you already belong.
As the day settles back